or not. And that will be significant. We'll see how serious the MAGA base and the MAGA Republicans are about releasing the files.
Meanwhile, Trump has now sued the Wall Street Journal over a story about an alleged letter he sent on Epstein's 50th birthday. Now, Trump says the story's fake and denied writing that letter. NBC News has not seen a copy of the letter. And a new poll shows 17% of Americans approve of Trump's handling of the Epstein issue, 54% disapprove. And two Senate Democrats calling for answers amid news of CBS canceling The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, days after that host slammed the network's parent company over its $16 million settlement with Donald Trump. CBS claims the decision did not have to do with politics. We've got a number of reporters and analysts in place. They're ready to go over all these new and developing storylines. We're going to begin with NBC's Yamiche Alcindor, who will join us from the White House. So, Yamiche, we have NBC News reporting the president's getting increasingly frustrated with his AG Pam Bondi, all amid this Epstein controversy. What are you hearing about that?
That's right, Alex. Our reporting, according to four people who are familiar with White House deliberations, is that President Trump is essentially growing weary of defending Attorney General Pam Bondi. This is someone that he said has been doing a fantastic job amid this uproar from, of course, his MAGA base, many of them even pushing for him to fire Attorney General Pam Bondi. And he was sticking by her and has been sticking by her. But our sources say that he really wants her now to clean up this mess. And, of course, that mess is related to the DOJ and the FBI releasing this unsigned memo that said that there was no real information that Epstein had a client list that the government had to release. That, of course, angered so many people in the president's base who are pushing for a release of that client list, even though, again, the government is saying one doesn't exist. That being said, the president had been pushing his supporters to sort of leave this behind, but then reverse course and push Bondi and the DOJ to actually go after the grand jury transcripts and make them public. So they're doing that now and waiting for a judge to make that decision. But I want to read to you part of what the president put in the original post about this. Originally, he was asking for all pertinent information to be released. Then afterwards, he said, in fact, that he wanted all information related to grand jury testimony to be released related to the Epstein case. So it's a slight deviation, but it's an interesting one because before he's saying all pertinent, now he's saying all. What you're seeing here is the president responding to this really unprecedented pressure from his base. He's been able to weather so many scandals and issues, but for this one, his own supporters are saying that he needs to release more information. And they're essentially claiming that he and his administration are essentially having a cover-up related to Epstein. So this is something that the president is trying his best to push back on. Of course, we also have that lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, and they're reporting that he wrote a birthday letter to Jeffrey Epstein back in 2003. So there's a lot going on, and the president is trying his best to get a handle of this situation, Alex.
Okay, Yamiche, thank you so much from the White House. Joining me now here in studio, we have Jake LaHutte, a senior writer for Wired, who covers the Trump White House and the Republican Party. And he writes, Trump's own strategists and advisors aren't sure the president's base will survive Jeffrey Epstein's ghost. Welcome, Jake. What do you mean by the base not surviving?
Well, I think that if you look at the polling, and I'm quite curious to see what might come out around the Sunday shows tomorrow, Trump's overall approval rating may not take too much of a hit, and he's always been able to survive in that, kind of high 30s, low 40s range. But I think there is a distinct before and after here with the base in terms of trust and just how they view their relationship with the president in that kind of unique parasocial way that he's been able to command them. And the bigger thing is that this is a voter and volunteer enthusiasm issue for the Republican Party more broadly going into the midterms. Yeah. When you look like who are the folks who donate small amounts of money, who are willing to knock on doors and volunteer. So that's where you could start to see some knock-on effects from this. And the Trump advisors who I spoke to, they're just simply perplexed and a little aghast at the lack of a strategy here. Mm-hmm. And that's where you start to see a lot of the blame going towards Pam Bondi.
Is there anything that could be released that would quell the questions and satisfy the MAGA base?
No, I don't think so. And I did have an advisor in that piece quite literally say there's nothing we can do to satisfy the base. Mm-hmm. The problem also is kind of in the nature of the conservative media ecosystem and how it's evolved over the last 5 years. So there's always a desire to just churn out more and more content from a big data dump like this. If we think of something like the Twitter files, which if you or I can recall any unique bit of information from that, Probably not.
You know?
But the conservative, influencers who feasted on that thing, they were able to extend that out for weeks and weeks. And I think that that's fundamentally the same desire here. But once it's in their hands, it's out of control of the White House. And of course, you think of identifying information for victims and all those considerations.
But look, Trump's been able to survive any number of malaise, controversies, issues that come up. What makes this different?
Well, a couple things. I think, first of all, his image with the base has always been this guy who's from the cadre of the elite, who is willing and more brave than everyone else to go in there and expose all of them, right? And a recurring theme with a lot of the things that really gin up the base center around these kind of elite pedophilia rings. So suddenly, when he starts getting a little dodgy and non-committal around Epstein, coupled with the fact that he decided to stack the top levels of federal law enforcement with Epstein truthers, you end up in this kind of impossible position. And the sort of
his own making.
Right. And the cope that I was hearing from within the administration was, the original sin was giving all these binders to the influencers to talk about the Epstein case.
You mean the nothing burger binders?
Right. Well, they were all largely public information already. And they don't seem to have the ability to do a little introspection and think, maybe if we just didn't campaign on this so hard. And, they talk about basically this inertia and momentum that they have no real control over anymore.
Is there going to be a head that rolls from this administration as a result of this? If things don't calm down a little bit within the MAGA base, is there someone that's going to have to go as a sacrificial lamb? And if so, who would that be?
Yeah, so I think that person would be Pam Bondi, but I really couldn't but I couldn't get a commitment on that when I was calling around on it. I think that she's viewed as having maybe the weakest hand and the lowest level of political capital in all this.
But Trump loves her.
He does. And actually, a wrinkle that did not make it into my piece was I got in touch with Matt Gaetz, who very well could have been overseeing this whole thing, and he double made sure to tell me over the phone and over text that he doesn't have any time for this. I don't know if he actually does. He's hosting a Newsmax show and seems to have quite a bit of free time on his hands. But, it really goes to show, this is the worst spot to be in. And if you look at someone like Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino, he's been going dark. He has not tweeted from his main account for over a week. Clearly, someone was leaking that he was considering quitting his job, and there was some sort of...
We took off a day of work, right?
Yeah.
Didn't show up.
So, I think Bondi of the three would be the most likely. But, there's a lot of blame going around internally, too, at these younger aides who they thought were maybe a little overly enthusiastic about the whole earlier binder release with the conservative influencers. But I'm not really sure if actually finding a head to roll for this thing is going to help the situation when it comes to that acute problem of the base.
Okay. Sheikh Lahat, thank you so much. So I want to turn now to former SDNY Assistant U.S. Attorney in Westchester County DA Mimi Rocha. Mimi is an adjunct professor